we're probably going to reach the point where we just send people to Mars and they start trying it on their own before
Right. I was
we
going to say,
have the
like,
scientific studies set up ethically to do this.
well, in one, I mean, to your point, I think that the first child not born on Earth in some way will, it's not going to be like you said, not going to be accident. Like someone's going, we're going to head to Mars. They're like, we're going there for, I don't know, 5 years or whatever the time period is. Like whether it's by design of we're doing this under a study, please have a child, versus we're sending like a bunch of men and women to Mars for 5 years. Stuff happens.
Yep, they're all still human beings that are going to,
Right.
go through whatever range of emotions and whatever range of actions that subsequently come from that.
What a very scientific way of putting that.
Thank you. And the other aspect too of speciation we didn't touch on, because I was sort of thinking through the natural processes, but there's the idea of having designer astronauts, where if you're going to actually go somewhere and colonize a planet, and it's not a short trip where you're going to come back in a few years. You're going to be there for a long time. You're going to have children there, and they're going to spend their lives there. Do you want to start introducing modifications to the human genome that could help you with muscle mass, bone mass, that could help you with radiation resistance, or these other issues that, there's a debate over this, whether or not it's actually an enhancement, because the point of doing it is for Martians to have the same lifespan and quality of life that they would have on Earth.
Right. Well, it's always back to the beginning of the conversation, which is the medical. I mean, whether it is the medical intervention of giving them steroids or whatever equivalent to just be okay, down to the genomic modification of, well, I can just turn on this gene expression or switch this out or whatever it is to be able to allow you to have that. And then you have the interesting downstream effects of, we had I don't know, I'm sure you do. I know of a lot of technological offshoots of the space program, Velcro, et cetera, like those kinds of things. I don't know of any medical offshoots. I'm sure there were, but in this case, if there are, to your point, if we find things that make it enhancement for astronauts to be designer, whatever term you want to use, then you ask the question, well, that might be good for people on Earth for XYZ reasons, right? Like we talk about, whether you want to use the term longevity, health span, health optimization, whatever, word we want to use for it. If you can increase, if you increase somebody's health span on Mars, unless it is literally like they can breathe the Martian atmosphere, which then I'm not sure there's a lot of value to that on Earth. There might be direct value to like, well, yeah, that would probably, making somebody have easier to, to put on muscle mass. It probably has value here if we think about the side effects.
Yeah, I think that it does have the potential to open a can of worms there. Where there's some people
I was thinking positively. Why did you?
You were thinking positively.
I was thinking positively.
I guess the genomics community I come from, when I was in grad school, everyone was very anti-CRISPR babies. Maybe a bit of a sea change is happening on that. I'm not sure, but the scientific community is still very hesitant to start introducing any sort of modification that affects the germline. And the point of introducing it to astronauts is that it does affect the germline, so that they will be able to live there for generations.
Well, so there's a difference though between the putting something into the germline and have it going on versus putting something in at all, right? Like because we have this like we have Kasivagi. I always think I pronounce it wrong, but the sickle cell cure by Vertex, right? Like the things that CRISPR can do. And the positive effects, and how can we do, and then we get to the the Ozempic debate about the positive effects of GLP-1, and I always hear the case and be like, oh well, it's got these bad side effects. I'm like, yeah, but that's version 3. Version 6 will not have that side effects. There's too much positive benefit to these types of interventions, and so you ask that question of what can we do with this? What positive interventions that we can do? And yes, there are interesting questions that we need to ask.
Yeah.
about what do we do, what do we do with this? But I do think there's some, we should be asking the questions. I've always been, you know, I've never liked the outright like we shouldn't do these things. My biggest example has always been when I look at nuclear power, right? And I look at what happened and the negative effect of us essentially
Mm.
destroying the nuclear power industry in the U.S.,
Yeah.
especially
No,
after something like 3 Mile Island that didn't hurt anybody, no direct effect, no long term health effect. And what happened was we had, only now with AI are people like it's the most symbolic thing in the world. The fact that we are turning on 3 Mile Island to power AI. Like, okay,
we
it's
found
not
the
environmentalism. It was
so that's
it's
interesting. Yeah,
technology.
we found the use case that was worth it. We decided AI was worth whatever perceived risk people still feel there is from nuclear. Um, I mean, I guess the question is colonizing Mars worth the perceived risk?